Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. We're getting to the end of the year, and it has been quite a 2020. I don't think a year ago today we would have expected the world to be in the situation it's in right now. But I'm not going to talk too much about it other than at least there's some hope on the horizon, especially for countries like the United States where I live, where things haven't been going so well. Perhaps at this time in 2021, when I make a video like this, things overall will be doing a lot better, both with regards to the pandemic and of course the job situation. My heart really goes out to everyone who's been impacted by the human malware affecting the planet, especially the economic impacts that we've been experiencing, not to mention the loss of life that's being experienced in so many countries. I've been so lucky as a YouTuber doing this because I've been able to continue working on my hobby, which is this channel, even though I can't really leave the house and can't really do my normal things. So at least it's a way for me to stay safe and still keep my time occupied and have fun. And if I can make videos that make other people smile or enjoy themselves, then all the better. And I love getting comments from people telling me that they wait eagerly for my new videos to be posted just to give them a little pick me up and cheer them up a little bit. That's just incredible. Today is a Wednesday video, which means I'm going to be opening up a package that was sent to me. And I have to talk about that a little bit because I think I've mentioned it many times, but I have to say it again. The generosity of my viewers who just keep sending me packages is incredible. It just touches me in a way that I can hardly describe. Underneath this tree here, which is fake by the way, there are a bunch of packages that were sent in from viewers just like you, and I will be getting to them. So don't worry if you haven't seen your package opened up yet on the channel. I have a process and it results in a little bit of a backlog. The mail calls that you'll be seeing around now were actually packages that I got mostly in October and some of November, and it takes me a little while to kind of get through them and open them. But there are a few things that I actually received even before then that I haven't yet shown on the channel, only because I wanted to dedicate an entire main Saturday video to them, and I haven't had a chance to get one of those made. Before I get started with the rest of the video, I just want to close out this intro and say I want to wish everyone a happy holiday, whatever it is you celebrate, and of course, a happy new year. And let's look to 2021 as the year that finally we start to get over the hump with the human malware and things really start to get better. So without further ado, let's get right to it. And now to this week's mail call episode. I think if you watch my videos, you may recognize the U-Haul box here as something sent in by Stewart, the wonderful man who donated that Apple II Plus computer to me and also the HP signal tracer along with its brothers, the Logic Probe and the Logic Pulsar, I think it was, in that nice carrying case. He also sent in those awesome VIC-20 things that you saw recently on a mail call episode, like the 80 column card and that homemade memory card. So anyhow, Stewart has sent me this stuff as well. Apparently, these three big boxes are, well, two big boxes and one smaller one, apparently all go together. So I was instructed that I should open them up together. So I figured I might as well make a specific episode about this. And who is not interested in seeing Stewart's packing job? Because we know how the Apple II was packed. It was like the best home packing ever. So perhaps inside the U-Haul box will be a repeat performance of that. We'll see. Stewart, if you're watching, people are going to grade you on your packing material and your packing abilities. I was given specific instructions to start with the U-Haul box, then this big box on the bottom, and then the priority mail box. So let's get to opening. Incidentally, this first U-Haul box is really heavy, so I'm really curious what's in here. He sent it all the way from New Hampshire to Oregon here, and he used FedEx Ground. And just in case you're shipping anything heavy, it seems like FedEx Ground is by far the least expensive option. USPS, the postal service in the US, if you're shipping within the border of the country, you'd think that they would be the cheapest, right? Like, I mean, they are the incumbents, right? Versus the smaller companies like FedEx. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Their rates are really high, and not to mention, not reliable. I'm currently waiting on a package that is coming from Europe, and it arrived in New Jersey, got itself to Seattle, which is just not far north of Portland. It's been there since Monday, and it's Saturday, and it's still not delivered. It's now in Portland. It hasn't been for a couple days, but yet why isn't it delivered? I just have no idea. So I'm ranting right now, but FedEx Ground, again, like I said, you know, I'm not being paid by them, but I've found that they are definitely the more inexpensive option for shipping heavy stuff. All right, well, Stewart is up to his usual amazing packing here. We have R5 1-inch thick insulation foam, and we have amazing pull strings for easy removal of said packing material. Aha, and a letter. And a little thumb drive here that seems to be missing its case. So there's the flash drive up close. That's probably the flash memory. And there's the controller chip. All right, so the letter here, he says, "Hi, Adrian, hope you're doing well. So I hope you need a little more installation because here's another of my boxes," and with a happy face. Yeah, that's for sure. Now you've gotten through Septandy and some PC and Apple stuff, I thought you might take you back to the good old Commodore days. So here's a quick sampler box for you to enjoy. I have no clue about the condition of any of these items other than one was told there was something wrong with the keyboard and not talking about the icon on the keys. That's mysterious sounding. By the way, you previously got a box of goodies from Germany and we're trying to read the box. I would like to suggest that you download Google Translate and from the Play Store or App Store, and you can download languages like German on your phone, point the camera at it, and here's what it says. Never know when it might come in handy. And yeah, there's a picture here showing the 128 box being real-time translated. And absolutely, yes, I do know about that. I travel abroad a lot, and this is coming very, very handy for me when I've been abroad, and it even works offline, which is pretty amazing. It works better in person than off a YouTube video, but you get the point. I also threw in a few other items as well. Hope you enjoy them. Stewart from New Hampshire. And yeah, by the way, Stewart, the way he spells his name is S-T-E-W-A-R-T. I know people have put comments in the videos when I get stuff from Stewart and they write S-T-U-A-R-T, which is a very common way to say Stewart as well. But yes, Stewart is spelled the alternative way. I'm not sure which is the more predominant way. All right, well, let's see. What do we got going on here? Lots of bubble wrap. Oh my, look at this. All right, let's see. Where do I start? I think my tactic is going to be to unbox everything in here, and then I will take a closer look at things. All right, some Haribo twin snakes. Can never go wrong with that. And we have some, of course, some gold bears made in Germany too. Nice. But these are, of course, the American flavored ones. And some of my favorite, the Haribo sours, and these ones are made in the UK. All right, well, we're getting a little view of what's going on in here, and okay, I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm gonna unpack everything in here. This is literally like Christmas. What is this? What? Look, oh my. How crazy, the first Commodore 116 machine. I think this is the first one. This was never sold in the US, right? Clearly this one wasn't with what looks like German on here, I guess, right? Oh, wow. This is look at the condition. The box is incredible on this. Packing material here. Oops. So this looks like, at least the box here, it's a Commodore +4. I just have to take a peek inside. Let's see what's actually in here. Oh, a manual and a piece of foam from Stewart. And there it is, a +4 with its power brick and whatnot. Awesome. All right, and some more packing material. And what is this here? This looks like a bread bin of some kind. And here we have a VIC-20. And this is one of the later types with the rainbow sticker. The one I owned back when I was a kid was the first version with the gold sticker, I guess it is. This has a very strange looking power input that I don't think matches any of my other ones. So that's fascinating. Wait a second. Yeah, made in Germany. This must be a PAL VIC-20. which is definitely not something that I have. I only have NTSC VIC-20s. Wow, okay. So that must explain the different power connector on here. I'm sure it still runs off of the same, 9 volt AC, I'm sorry, power, but cool. And look at this, there's another computer. Here's some of the packing material. All right, so the packing job wasn't as spectacular as the last one, but it didn't need to be because most of the stuff that was in here was already in its original box, unlike the Apple II, which was all just exposed. So Stewart did do an incredible job with that packing, although I see another drawstring on the bottom there. If I move this box, I see that as a drawstring, so there might be something else. All right, so here's a Commodore 16. Easy to use, learning computer. Let's see, let's take a look inside. Very nice. There's the original C16. Stewart even put a little piece of foam in there to keep this stuff in check. Here's a power brick, has a US plug, so clearly this was something that was sold here. And of course the tutorial cartridge, very common for these. That was a pack-in. And that might be it, but let's just double check by moving this foam and lifting up the bottom trap door. Is it a trick? Is it just like the bottom of the box, or is there more goodies hidden in here? Oh wait, look, there's more stuff hidden in there. Look at that, hiding out in the bottom of the box. There's a very, very beat up Commodore 128. Poor 128. Look at that, with one super yellow key. These keys seem way too low, like they're pushed in. The keyboard attaches to the top lid on the 128, and I'm wondering if this got bashed really hard. Yeah, because those keys should be above the edge of the case, and they're very sunken in for some reason. C128, made in Hong Kong. There's a warranty void sticker, which has been opened, but who knows? Don't know if this is a PAL unit or, oh, a US unit. Wait a second, I just noticed the keys. Is that Arabic writing? What? Arabic? Oh, wow, very interesting. Okay, well now this is even more fascinating. This thing's like a mystery box. Okay, well let me just check on the rest of this here, make sure there's nothing else. I think that is it. That is the bottom of the box. Just some nice packing there at the bottom. Oh boy, yeah, Stewart, your packing, as usual, impeccable. Oh, I had taken this out of the box as well. This looks like a data set. This was one of the first things I lifted off the top. Commodore data set with the manual. It's in pretty good shape too. This was the exact model of data set I had as a kid with my VIC-20. There were earlier ones that were more squared off, but I had this more rounded, soft cornered one. Here's the next box from Stewart. So while this says Final Form on it, this was actually sent from him, but Final Form is that store here in Portland that has a bunch of, I don't know, retro stuff like t-shirts and stickers and stuff, and I still haven't been able to go see them, but they're up here in North Portland. And so he bought this locally, and they actually just dropped it off in my P.O. box. So this box wasn't shipped across country. So anyhow, let's see what is in here. Fragile, and on the side of the box it says, this side up. All right, well, packing job, not as good as Stewart's. Not at all. I mean, it's recyclable though, the cardboard. That's good in a way. I think before I start, I'm gonna break into the twin snakes here. Love these twin snakes. It's one side is sort of a sour flavor, and one side is sweet. And these are, incidentally, made in Germany. This is more the packing I would expect from people. What Stewart does is over and above. So yeah, empty recyclable bag, lots of bubble wrap, another grocery store bag. Fred Meyer is a big supermarket chain up here in Portland. I actually shop at Fred Meyer myself. It's owned by Kroger, which is a big supermarket conglomerate here in the US. It's a cool store because it's literally like they sell everything there. You can buy paint, tools, groceries, TVs, phones, the whole 9 yards, video games. In fact, sometimes when there's a new release of like a game console, it's somewhere where people don't expect you could buy them. Like you can buy the PS5 there and you can buy the Xbox. I mean, I'm sure they're sold out, but it's just not the regular stores where people would think to go buy stuff. So I've gone and bought video games on release day where everyone else had big lines or were sold out. And they're like, oh yeah, we have it. And I could also buy my groceries there. Okay, so here we go. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of packing material. An Atari game controller. And this, Congo Bongo. I don't know, that does not look like an Atari cartridge. And there's something in here. We'll take a look inside here in a moment. But yes, a regular Atari controller. And let's see, is this... Yeah, this is one of the ones where it unscrews, which is not the original controller. I think these are from, what, the flashbacks? There's going to be people on the channel who can talk about this with a little more authority than me, but I'm going to say that this is one of the newer controllers and not one of the originals. Oh boy. Okay, well, I can kind of see what this is already, and it's something I definitely don't have, and it's something that's pretty cool. Some people may be able to tell what this is already. I'm gonna lift this out of here. But there it is. SX-64. So this is a Commodore SX-64, which is a portable Commodore 64 in a little transportable computer. There's the keyboard. It has a built-in monitor, built-in floppy drive. There is a power cord, and luckily, I see right here the thing that is so hard to find, the keyboard cable. The keyboard cable, while you can make a replica, it will be not molded connectors like this, so it won't look good. And very often, the keyboard connector is lost. Now, just use as a standard kind of a DB25 or some kind of a D-sub connector, goes into the keyboard, goes in the computer, but you really, if you don't have the original cord, it's gonna be hard to hook up the keyboard. And that is something that is very often lost on these things. So wow, I can't even believe it. All right, let me lift this thing out of here. It's really heavy. You can just get a glimpse here of where the keyboard connection plugs into on the computer. And the bottom of the computer is pretty good. Looks like a little bit of water has been on this thing at some point. So hopefully this thing works, but wow, that is heavy. Transportable. It's definitely on the luggable side. Okay, a power cord. Let's just see if anything else is in here. Nice, they had all this egg cart packaging on the bottom, but remember, this didn't even get shipped. This was brought over to my P.O. box by the owners of the store. So this never went through any kind of transportation thrown around in shipping. So even with this packing material, this thing would have experienced barely any stress. All right, and we have the final package here, this priority mailbox. All right, we've got some small stuff here. We have a note and one final little thing here. And in the letter here from Stewart, he says, hope you enjoy the selection of Commodore items, the SX-64. I never did actually get to see in person. As you know, I managed to get it off Patrick from Final Form out there in Portland. And from everything I saw in the pictures, it looked good. I haven't opened it yet, but yeah, it looks good on the external part of the case. However, of course, it's 30 years old. Things break over time. The two main issues I found when looking for SX-64s were capacitors and keyboard membranes going bad. So hopefully all of the system is well as it is currently, but just in case you need them now or down the road, here's a complete recap kit for the monitor and system from Console 5 and new membrane spacer from RWAP software. Also threw in some 3D prints since those are a little more portable than the SX-64. As always, keep up the great work with the videos. Thank you, Stewart. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, so to speak, pun intended. I'm gonna put these things with the SX-64 and then go back to the beginning and start looking at the stuff I took out of the big U-Haul box first. All right, well, let's start with this, the Commodore 116. Now, this is one of the TED line of machines. TED as in the Commodore Plus/4, the Commodore 16, and the 116 are all of the same line. They use the same exact chipset inside. I'm pretty sure this was the first machine of that line released. Commodore wanted to release as a really, really inexpensive computer, and they completely screwed up the whole launch, and they ended up making a computer way too expensive for its capabilities, and they essentially killed it. There are tons of videos talking about the history of these machines, so I won't really get too much into it, but I'm 99.99999% sure that this particular one, the 116, was never sold in the US. So this is obviously a German one with all of the German writing on here. In fact, I just love this 80s-tastic scene. This kid right here with this red striped shirt, that could have been me with the glasses on. But this kid, he's really interested in what's going on, and like she's just like, oh, you guys are nerds, but that's kind of cool at the same time. I'm just gonna guess at this stuff. I know Stewart told me to use Google Translate, but I'm gonna say that's a sound and music generator, 8 programmable function keys. This is something about like you can connect peripherals to it, 75 programmable keys, maybe? I don't know. I wonder what this 121 is here. Not too sure. Oh, maybe it's colors. I think this has a much more advanced color palette than the 64 does. While it's only 16 colors at any given time, it is configurable. Now, everything I'm talking about here will be applicable to this and the other 2 machines that Stewart sent, the Plus 4 and the C16. The back of the box doesn't have anything on it, so we can't make fun of any hilarious pictures, and the sides are pretty much the same thing. So let's pop this open. Wow, this thing is very nice condition. The Commodore 116, and yes, all in German, and wow, this looks like it was made on a typewriter. Like, look at that. The typesetting is very rudimentary on this particular manual. A lot more rudimentary than what you found on the VIC-20 and Commodore 64 manuals. Maybe because this particular one was just rushed to market. All right, so here is the little computer. It is very small, which is super cool. Look at that, it's so tiny. And it has rubber chiclet keys. These are keys that are very much reminiscent of what you find on the ZX Spectrum. So if you've ever played with the ZX Spectrum, it feels very similar. They're just a little bit smaller, and look, it has this giant space bar, which of course is not a real key, so when you push on one part of it, it goes down, but over here it doesn't. There's sort of like a D-pad here, which actually feels okay. But yeah, I can't imagine typing a lot on this. It is not going to be easy. So we have the cartridge connector, which is the same cartridge connector as on the other TED machines. Power input has a standard DC power input. IEC serial, it has the cassette interface, and the cassette port is the same signaling as all the other Commodores, but they miniaturized the connector just because they were intending to make computers this size, and they didn't want to have that large connector that, say, the VIC-20 and actually the PET introduced. The same goes for the joystick ports. They are small, even though they're compatible with the other ones. They just miniaturized them so they could fit on this computer. And we have a video port. There's RF out on this side. If we look at this side, we just have the power switch. DC 9 volts, 1 amp. And it's the 264 series. So I keep saying TED. It's also AKA 264. The TED is the name of the graphics sound chip that sort of does everything on this thing. And that's one of the chips that always goes bad. But actually the chip that really goes bad is the processor. It's basically killing all of these machines. I am not holding out hope that any of these actually work because of the processor just most likely being dead. Let's look inside here. We should have like the European plug. Oh, look, there's a program here. Basic cores. Too bad I don't have a way to hook the cassette drive up at the moment, so can't use that. Obviously, Stewart was in here doing some packing because this wouldn't have been in there. And there it is. There's a 220 volt, 240 volt transformer of sorts, Commodore with the European 2-prong there, and a DC barrel. And this looks like an RF lead. It goes from the standard cinch RCA type to the RF connector that was used in Europe. So I obviously can't use the European German power supply here, and I don't have a step-up transformer. It's probably something I should buy just for situations like this so I can test stuff out. But I do have a power supply here that I made for using with my particular Commodore C16. It uses the same DC barrel jack, I think. Now this is just a 9-volt power supply, and see I wrote C16 PSU on here, but notice there is I cut this, and that's because on the C16, it is center negative, and I need to make sure that's the same on here, and I'm assuming that it's going to be identical. To check that, I'm just gonna break out the multimeter on continuity mode, and I'm going to touch the center pin here, and then I'm gonna poke around in here at the ground. And yes, basically I was touching the shielding that's inside the cartridge connector there, and I was getting continuity from the center pin. So that tells me that it is exactly the same as the C16, which means I'm safe to use this little power supply here, which is 9-volt, 2-amp power supply, switching power supply. For a video connection, I'm gonna use my standard VIC-20 one. This is the one I sort of use with everything. And of course, I'm gonna have to use it with the the RetroTink because this is going to be a PAL output machine, so I can't use my little Philips white TV that I've been using a lot lately. So we plug that in there. Luckily, Commodore kept the standard DIN video output connector. And I think we are ready to plug this in. Now, when I turn this on, if the CPU is dead, I think we won't even get a black screen. The color bars will stay, and that's because the CPU initializes the graphics chip on this thing. And without the CPU running, yeah, we're not going to get any picture at all. So here we go. Okay, we got something. Oh, look at this. It's actually working. I'm assuming the RetroTink is doing its usual silliness. I'm just going to unplug and plug in the composite video connector again here in the RetroTink. Come on, RetroTink, sync up, please. Okay, here we go, we got it. And it's just the wrong mode. There it is. It's actually working. So, wow, very cool. Let's just see if this thing actually is, all the keys are functioning. Yes, this thing appears to be working perfectly. All the keys appear to be responding. Oops, I accidentally went up the top. That is amazing. So what I actually have here is the tutor cartridge that I got a while back with my C16, and I replaced it with the 264 diagnostic ROM. So if I plug this in, this is a modern diagnostic written in current times. I'm pretty sure it's an open source project on GitHub. I will find the link and I'll put it in the description below. I am just going to put some Deoxit here into the cartridge connector because that's one area where it always gets crusty. One thing about this cartridge to notice is this was included with a C16, which is a bread bin case, but look at the styling of the case. It's got the same grooves here as this machine. Clearly, this and the Plus 4 were all designed around the same time, and that is the design language of this particular cartridge. And when you open this cartridge up, by the way, there's a screw here. The one that I had, at least, it was just a standard ROM chip, a single ROM chip, so it was trivial to burn an EPROM, stick it in here, and then replace the original basic tutor cartridge, which clearly I have no desire to ever use. So this is a much more useful cartridge. There we go. Let's turn this on and let this run through. All right, it's doing its thing. Of course, the RetroTink is doing its silliness. Plug and unplug that. There it is, Rob Clark, 2019. He's the guy who built this thing, as far as I remember. Well, maybe it wants me to push some keys on here. I can't remember. Okay, whatever. There we go. It's doing some of the interrupt testing there. Look at all the colors that this thing can do. It's a lot more color capability than on the Commodore 64, actually. It has a redefinable color palette that you just don't get. Plus, look, it can do stuff like that. It can, okay, the RetroTink is resyncing. It can move the entire thing around. Yeah, so this test is actually good. Everything that it should have been testing actually just passed successfully. Awesome. There's some like test harness stuff that I don't have that makes some of these other things work properly, like the keyboard testing and whatnot. But that absolutely works. I was positive this machine wouldn't be working. Let me plug my SDIEC into this machine and let's load up a game. Now, of course, this SDIEC was designed for use on a Commodore 64 and a VIC-20, right? So it's got the standard cassette port, which is not compatible with this. But what I went ahead and did a long time ago, and you may have noticed this when I used this in videos, is I wired in a regular USB cord. So I can just take something like this, which is a standard USB adapter, right? And plug this in and power up the SDIEC directly without the computer. So that should do the trick. Let's see, we'll turn this on. Okay, so we're gonna load. Typing on this is really not easy. Let me just reset the RetroTink here. So that's weird how every time I turn on the computer, it gets that weird sync problem. Okay, here we go, run. Oh boy, and then the backspace key is this key up at the top. It's like one of the function keys. Run. Okay, so it's loading the C16 plus 4 version of the file browser. And I have a plus 4 directory here with, I think, some stuff copied into it. One of the issues is, though, is that I think most of these games, which are more modern things, are designed to run on these computers with 64K of RAM. And this, of course, only has 16, so not everything is gonna work. So let's just try this first quadrillion game here. I've only played around with this stuff a little bit, so I'm not totally positive. And of course, there's no fast loader on this thing, so stuff might be a little slow to load. So this game isn't loading anymore, and I have a feeling it's because of the problem with the lack of memory. So let's try again. So we don't actually need the file browser because when I reset it, the SDIEC is still in the exact directory it was in before. Oh, you know what? I think this version of BASIC has a directory command. Directory. Oh yes, there it is. It does a directory on the drive. You don't even need to load, do all that stuff. Okay, I do have the file browser in here anyways. Let's just try one of the small games. Like here's one called 1010. 1010, here you go. Hit the pieces onto the boards, complete rows and columns, secure. Oh, it's like Tetris, but like a 10 by 10 version, I think. Wait, okay, no, you just position it anywhere you want. Okay, clearly I don't know what I'm doing here. Anyhow, this thing is absolutely working a treat. All right, next up, this is the Commodore C16. Easy to use learning cartridge enclosed. That's the cartridge I was talking about that I converted into the diagnostic one. This is a sticker here from probably where this was bought, Direct Mail Specialist Incorporated in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Are they still around? 39564 is their zip code. But this is the C16 box, like the world computer. This computer was a real disappointment. People would buy this thinking, ooh, it's compatible with the Commodore 64 games. It's not. They just reused the mold, just threw it together. It's the same motherboard, or practically the same motherboard that was in that other computer. I don't think it's the same motherboard, but it's a small motherboard that hardly takes up any room inside. So let's see what's in here. Okay, so here it is. There's that basic tutorial cartridge. So you can often just open this up. If you have one of these, I highly recommend swapping it out for at least a game. You can put a game in there, or you can put the diagnostic ROM. That's right. Okay, so we have a regular RF cable. This is one that would be for the US, and clearly this is a US machine. This is an NTSC one because this is a little 9.5 volt 1 amp power brick, just a cheap transformer. Nothing special going on in there. Let's pull this out of here. Someone had put these on upside down, so that's why it was so difficult to get on there and get off. See how this goes on nice and easily that way, but they had just jammed it on backwards, even though there are like reliefs cut out in there for the function keys, for instance. Yeah, nicely that goes on. So yeah, luckily the keys weren't broken or anything. I feel like in the US, these Commodore 16s, when you get one of these, it's like it was never used. Because I think people bought these and they were so disappointed in this computer, they probably used it a little bit and then it got put away. Now, I know that's not going to be the case all the time, but I do already have a C16, and the one I have is also, like this one, in absolutely mint condition. Okay, there's a couple little tiny scratches on the bottom. Oh no, that's just dirt. It comes right off. So this machine is not too different than the last one, although I guess the ports are in different configurations. So joystick ports are right here. There's a reset button. There's the DC input. And on the back, we have the cartridge connector here and the video and the serial right here. There's that one little cassette port. I mean, they could have just used the standard cassette port from the 64, but they didn't. And then, of course, we have RF there. Yep, so just like the other machine, those peripherals from your older machines were incompatible with this unless you bought adapters. I mean, just so silly, Commodore, so silly. And for whatever unknown reason, they redesigned the layout on the keyboard. Like the arrow keys are up here instead of having the two that were down here where you have to hold shift to go the other direction. So it just meant if you were used to, say, a VIC-20 and you got one of these machines as an upgrade, the keyboard layout was quite different. All right, let's see if this thing works. I just plugged it in, the power switch was already on, and it does work as well. 2 working Commodore 264 class machines in a row. That kind of blows my mind. I'm kind of shocked that shift lock is on. No big deal there. This thing is working as well. What are the chances? Since this is an NTSC machine and this is a little NTSC only television set, I figured I'd try it without the RetroTink because it's acting weird, the RetroTink sometimes, but yeah, that's not good. Clearly something is actually wrong with the C16, and it was running. I popped the screws out of the bottom of the case. Let's take a look inside here. Yeah, this is very typical interior of one of these machines. Nice one, Commodore. You used masking tape to hold the keyboard cable. So there it is. That's the little motherboard I was talking about. Lots of space, RF shield, lots of the thermal compound on there. At least it's easy to get this RF shield off. It is just simply some screws. Removing the RF shield also lets you take the motherboard right out of the machine. So there it is. That is the C16 motherboard. Now, interesting is I've never seen the TED chip. This large 48-pin DIP is the TED. This is a ceramic package, so that's news to me. This 40-pin DIP here is the CPU, which is bespoke and it's unique to this particular machine, or not just the C16, but all of these TED 264 machines all run this CPU, and it dies like no tomorrow. Kind of like the C64 PLAs all fail. Same thing with this CPU. It is the most unreliable chip I think I have ever seen with Commodore. It's basically almost a guarantee that that chip dies on these machines. And the TED is next. Maybe the fact that this is ceramic and is a good sign. This will be more reliable than the non-ceramic versions that I have in my other machines. I don't know. I will just quickly reseat these two ICs here. I'm not going to do extensive repair. If this thing is not working, we'll leave that for repair-a-thon. But I will reseat the CPU and the TED, and then we'll just see if that does anything at all to help this thing out. Incidentally, to upgrade this to 64K is trivial. It's just 2 RAM chips. It's easy swap, very simple mod, I think, to do it. There's a PLA, which is one of these, it's probably this one, and there are 2 ROM chips, one's for basic and one's for the kernel. The TED chip does everything. It's the graphics and the sound chip, so you don't have a separate sound chip. And that was the design of this, to be really inexpensive, so very few chips were required. All right, did that fix it? It did not. Look at that. Immediate garbage, and I can kind of see flashing, and it's very much out of sync. Well, that's disappointing that it worked and then stopped working. I am just checking that the 5 volts is good, and it is absolutely. It's 5.05 volts, so we have a nice solid 5 volts. This does use a voltage regulator here to bring this DC 9 volts or whatever down to the 5 volt that the chips need. And obviously, this computer has gone and failed. It worked one time and then gave up the ghost. So the Commodore C16 worked, then died, and it has no sync. So I'm going to stick this note on here, and this machine will need to be addressed in a future repair-a-thon type video. Next up, we have the Commodore Plus4, which is essentially the same as the other 2 machines we just looked at, except this has 64 kilobytes of RAM on it. This is Stewart's packing there. So if I pop this out, it's obviously the big brother of the 116. Like I mentioned, this has 64K of RAM, but its big claim to fame, supposedly, at least in Commodore marketing speak, was this has an additional ROM chip in it that includes some built-in applications. I think it has like a spreadsheet, word processor, database, but they are very, very rudimentary, not good programs. A big benefit over the 116, of course, proper keyboard. It looks really cool, has a nice form factor. Port-wise, it's identical, except it has a user port that was not on the other 2 machines. So I don't know how many accessories actually use this particular port, but it's there compared to the other machines that are not. Power supply connection is also not a DC barrel jack. Instead, no, it uses a Commodore 16 type power supply, but thank you, Commodore, for switching up the pinout on here. So it's a square connector, which I think is different than anything else. I don't think I can use the Commodore 128 power supply, but maybe I can. In the box here, of course, is a RF switch, RF cable, and one of these death bricks. These are the bricks that go bad and kill your computer, so I'm not going to use that. The box here does try to talk up the productivity software that's built in, so word processing, spreadsheet, graphics, and data management. These apps are so hard to use and so rudimentary. I suppose if you had nothing, you could use them, but to try to trump up this computer and say it's worth the hundreds of dollars or whatever it costs at the time because of these garbage apps, yeah, no wonder why this thing failed. So indeed, from a power connector perspective, right here, if this focuses, this is a C128, and notice it has an extra pin in the middle, which means it's not gonna work on this thing. I guess I'm gonna have to use the death adapter. Yep, that doesn't plug in. I think, if I recall, I have a Plus4 as well, and I think on my Plus4 what I did is I swapped out that connector on the motherboard with the one from the Commodore 64, because it's exactly the same voltage as the 64 uses, so there's really no reason why you can't just use the 64 power supply, and Commodore just was being difficult by putting this square connector in. So I guess, against my better judgment, I'm going to use this death brick, which, when these go bad, they send more than 5 volts to the 5-volt rail, which does kill your computer. So don't use these, really. I really don't recommend it. Okay, so the death brick is plugged in. I have the multimeter here. I'm just going to connect clip leads to these wires, to the pins here, I mean. And I'm going to try to figure out which 2 are the 5-volt ones. And I'm just going to quickly measure what we're getting on the power supply here to see if it looks good. So we're getting 5.35 volts, a little bit high. I mean, I don't think that's going to kill anything because there's going to be some voltage drop going through the wires and stuff. So it's probably going to end up around 5.2 in this computer, but that is certainly not ideal. I just hate these stupid bricks. So I have it plugged into the small monitor and it's plugged into the death brick. Here we go. Okay, so this one's actually working. I can't believe it. I can't believe that originally all 3 were working. Now, one interesting thing is when I turn this on, if you notice the picture, that garbage looks a lot like what's happening on the C16. So the fault on the C16 may actually not be the TED or the CPU, but a ROM problem or one of the extra logic chips on there. Yeah, that initial garbage screen is exactly the same. So on here, it says 3+1 on F1 key. So I push F1, this does a sys command, you hit enter, and this is the built-in applications, right? And let's see here. I guess this is like our word processor, and it's 40 columns, and it's just a terrible product. I won't get into this. There will be plenty of other videos on YouTube about these. I think in the integrated software manual, it goes into detail on how to use these apps, but they're extremely user-friendly. And notice the spreadsheet isn't even like the full height of the screen. It's just overall not impressive. Not impressive, Commodore. While they lack, say, things like hardware sprites, and they don't have a SID sound chip, so the sound circuitry is much more primitive, there's still some pretty good games, actually, that came out for these, especially more recently. And the fact that it has some tricks you can do with the video output circuitry, including multiple colors on screen, more than the 16 colors, things like that, you can do some pretty cool stuff. And then, of course, these machines are just an oddity since they were such a failure compared to the VIC-20 and the C-64, you know, in the marketplace. One more thing I want to add about this machine is just like the other one, the C16, this thing is in mint condition, other than a missing rubber foot on the bottom right here. It's really clean. And I think that's, again, because people bought these and were so disappointed with them, they just immediately put them back in the box, or nearly immediately. And you know what? I'm thinking about the failed Commodore 16, and I'm actually worried that the CPU did die on that, because now that I think about it, I think that garbage on screen is exactly what you get with the TED machines when the CPU is not running. Not all is lost, because could be other things too that cause that, but a real symptom of a dead CPU, I'm pretty sure is that, now that I think about it. Anyways, at least there are other machines to swap chips in and out of, so it's easy for me to test. All right, next up for testing is the very beat up and interesting Commodore 128. And look at this thing. The whole thing is warped. This poor computer has been through the ringer. I'm not sure if this localization with Arabic characters was done by Commodore or someone else, but a bunch of the Arabic symbols are scratched off the keys. So it doesn't seem like that was done at the factory. Maybe this was done after the fact, not too sure. And very strange that there's this one key. I suppose it probably got broken off at some point and someone found a replacement and stuck that on there. But the warped nature of this machine is, it's pretty shocking. I'm gonna crack this open and we'll take a look inside and see what we see from a ROM perspective. All right, so that's what we see underneath here. And why is the keyboard sagging and caved in on this side? Well, one reason is it's not screwed in. There's no screw there. In fact, there's a screw here in the middle, and there's a missing screw on that side. So it's missing at least 2 of the keyboard screws. The power LED, which is held in by the keyboard, is all hot glued? It's like hot glued. There's a little piece of plastic that holds that in, and that is long gone. I don't see, oh no, it's in there. It's just out of position. So someone just glued the power LED in, not knowing what to do. And the rest of the screws are in the keyboard. But yeah, the whole case, it has a curve to it. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but it is curved like that. So this poor thing is bent to hell. But take a look at the computer. That is some dirt. So obviously all the dirt that went onto here was on the keyboard in spades. Okay, the RF shield is free. Normally there's a screw right here holding onto this shield chassis there, and it wasn't there. I've already got some of the thermal compound on my fingers. That is a filthy, filthy motherboard. So everything looks completely in place and normal. I don't really see any, there's no extra ROMs. I don't see anything that would be like some mod to allow Arabic characters or anything like that. This all is 100% standard for 128. So you have a bodge wire here that's completely normal, empty socket, totally normal. So everything seems pretty standard. So I have a pigtail here that lets me plug into the power connector like so, and then I can plug in a regular Commodore 64 power supply. Now by regular, I don't mean, you know, a bog standard one. I'm talking about like my homemade one that has a lot more current capability than the standard C64 one. The standard C64 one is not powerful enough to run this machine, but of course I think mine has a 4 amp power supply in it or something along those lines. All right, here we go. Nothing, dead as a doornail. I'm hearing a pop, but we're not getting any picture whatsoever. Oh, you know what? Maybe if the monitor were connected, we might have a picture. And yeah, that does not seem like a happy camper right there. Yeah, we're getting kind of a messed up sync there. Video chip is inside this can here, so maybe there's a problem. I'll just do a quick voltage check. Okay, so actually we're only getting 4.4 volts on the 5-volt rail, and that would definitely cause an issue. Let's check again on over here. So that could be a problem on the power connector. Perhaps it's just really dirty, judging by the dirtiness of everything here. So I'm just gonna hit it with some Deoxit. Power switch is actually, unfortunately, hard to get Deoxit into because it's kind of a sealed unit for the most part. So I'll just bathe it here and move it back and forth a whole bunch. It is possible to take these switches apart. I have tried and I have ended up breaking them doing it though. So if I don't have to, I really don't like taking them apart. And let's just get this power cord in and out a few times. All right, let's put the video back in. Oh, it was on actually. Yeah, we're getting 4.5 volts now, so it's slightly better. All right, well, this is gonna need to be part of a repair. This machine, this 128. So there it is, the Arabic 128. One thing I'm liking is the SID, which is right here, is a 6581R4AR, Advanced Resonance, so I'm told. I like these ones. These SID chips usually are reliable and they have pretty good sound. Clean, as in not a lot of background noise. The ones that have the AR specifically on them. You know what, I just had a thought putting the screws back in. This is most likely a PAL machine or CCAM or something along those lines. This monitor doesn't support that. That doesn't mean that we'd get no image, but that flickering that was going on was probably the image rolling. So this was equivalent of a black screen. That's pretty much, I'm sure, what's actually going on there. And yes, to confirm that, I have it plugged into the retro tank, and with the machine on, if I hit the reset button here, we're getting those normal vertical lines over on the left side, which is very typical for the VIC-2 chip. But notice there's no rolling, there's no garbage or anything like that. So this thing is just not starting with a black screen. So yes, a repair for this machine is in its future. A deep cleaning, try to get the case good, just get this thing up and running. Definitely, if anything, this keyboard needs to be cleaned up so these cool Arabic symbols on here can be preserved. If anyone has any background information about the Arabic on here, like was this done by a company? Did someone draw these on with a marker? I don't think these were drawn on. I think these were stuck on, but why are they scratched off? Yeah, if you have any info on this, please let me know. And last of the computers, we have the Commodore SX-64, and the keyboard just came off. Let me just carefully move that. So the machine has this carry handle, which is extremely chunky, and I think it has these little locking mechanisms here. So in this position, it allows you to select the position it's in. So if you want to have it like this, where the computer is tilted up, you can. I think I flipped these little levers on the side, and that locks it in place. So this is the SX-64. It has a built-in Commodore 1541 disk drive. This one came with the original card in there, although it was inserted the wrong way. It's supposed to go that way, and it was in that way. But either way, yep, that's for transportation. So 1541 disk drive. Looks like, I think it's the Alps mechanism in here. There's a little cubby here for storing your floppy disks or whatever, and obviously you can also store the keyboard cable, which someone has done. And it goes pretty deep. I think originally their idea was there might be 2 disk drives in here, although I think that never actually was sold. Maybe that was a mod that someone did. You have a little door here, which you can flip open. This offers controls for the CRT, which, as you see here, we have a little 5-inch CRT, which I think this is a glass covering on there too, which is pretty nice. The keyboard, which acts as the front cover, so you put this on like this, and it actually has these little clips to hold it on. Yeah, this is a bit scuffed up. Hopefully I can clean some of this. It feels like this is surface, or maybe not. I don't know. This is a painted plastic. The silver paint is on here. So this may or may not clean up, but I could try. But yeah, the keyboard is the Commodore 64 keyboard, but unfortunately, unlike the regular one, this is a membrane keyboard. And from my understanding, these go really bad. Stewart mentioned this in his letter. They can often be terrible, maybe require cleaning, and they can come back to life. But he has sent along a replacement membrane, which we'll take a look at in a second. So there's the keyboard connection. So this cable here just goes on like this, it's 25 pin. And then on the underside of the computer, I showed it when I unboxed it, this goes in there, and I think you just push this up into that little cavity there, give it a little push, and I think it is now connected. Let's continue the tour. So on the top of the machine, you see this grate here, which may or may not be ventilation. Yeah, it looks like it has ventilation things in it. But there's also this, which is a trap door for a game cartridge. So you can pop any Commodore 64 cartridge in there, and it should work perfectly. This part of the case is metal, and I just noticed here that there's actually a dent in this thing. So at some point, it got hit. These little blue caps on the arm thing here, I think these go missing a lot. And if we look at the back of the machine, this part is also metal. It's like a giant heatsink. We have the 2 joystick ports, video, serial IEC. We do have the user port, power input, so it has a built-in power supply, has a fuse, and a power switch. I think when Commodore designed and made the SX-64, they were envisioning business travelers traveling the road with their SX-64. Why would they want to be on business trips with a Commodore 64? I'm not sure. This thing was very costly when it was new. You'll be able to find lots of videos about it, so if you're interested and want to know more, give a quick Google search, check out the Wikipedia article. But yeah, it's an odd machine again. Commodore just doing very strange things. So I'm going to plug in this IEC cord here, and we'll see if this thing works or if it blows. All right, here we go, moment of truth. Okay, I hear what sounds like a working machine. Disk drive accessed briefly. It is working. Check that out. The kernel on this is generally exactly the same as 64, except for one minor thing. It doesn't support cassette tapes. And I think if you do shift run stop, it tries to load the floppy drive. Yes, it does. So that's one difference that over the regular 64. Shift run stop on the 64 will try to load the tape. Now, the keyboard actually is shockingly working. I'm assuming that some of these keys aren't going to work super well, and yep, Q is not very responsive, same with W, but it may just need a good cleaning. Geometry on this 5-inch CRT looks really good. I just took a look inside the cartridge port. It looks very clean in there. The fact that it's got that little cover over it, little trapdoor cover, that keeps it nice and clean, but I did spray a little Deoxit in there. Let's put in the Easy Flash 3. Let's see if Easy Flash 3 comes up. There it is. It's looking good. Now inside this little cover here, I think is a volume control. And yep, it's this top one here. And let's just give the SID tester a run. I want to see how the SID sounds before I do anything. Run all tests. All 3 channels are working properly, including the noise channels. But the low pass filter is dead. Oh, so is the band pass filter. Oh, and the high pass filter. So this SID is damaged. All three voices are working perfectly. None of the filters are working correctly at all. You just have no sound at all here. That's going to manifest itself in any game that uses any of the filters, which more modern stuff, of course, uses those filters. So when it tries to use the filter, I'll just turn the volume down, it will mute the audio entirely on that channel while the filter is applied. That's super unfortunate. So if I try to run Donkey Kong Arcade for a little 8-bit dance party, it's not going to sound very good. We'll try it anyways. Here we go. It's funny, it tries to access the disk drive. There it is. Yeah, that sounds screwed up. Ah, it's not the same because the SID is damaged. You hear it's popping in it. It's popping in and out. Incidentally, SID problems that are just like this are a reason why you should not rely on the sound test in this regular diagnostic ROM as your only way to see if a SID is good or not. This does not test the filters, and in the case of this diagnostic ROM, it's going to have the normal tones that will sound like the SID is working perfectly, when in fact this SID is not working perfectly, and that's really only exposed when you run the full SID benchmark on it. Here's the test I was talking about. So that sounds absolutely fine. So just keep in mind that if you're buying a SID chip, they need to play the full SID benchmark and not this test to validate the chip is working. So here's David Murray's Planet X2. The music sounds totally fine in this game. He must not be using the filters, just the different waveforms. All right, so the SX-64. The real problem is it needs to have a new SID put in there. Also, I mean, it goes without saying, a good clean, a little tune-up on the CRT, and the keyboard needs to be clean. It mostly works, but I found some of the keys were just a little unresponsive. You could push them a few times, it would work. I think a good disassembly and cleaning of the keyboard generally fixes that, but Stewart also sent along the membrane for it, so let's take a look at that. These are the little packages that he sent, and I think the membrane is in this little thing here, and it's unlabeled. I almost threw this out. Luckily, I hadn't recycled any of the packing materials for this stuff, so when I went looking for the membrane, I actually had it, and it was in the box with all the stuff that was going to be recycled. And here's the membrane. It's a couple different parts there. It's a plastic piece. I'll have to go look up instructions on how to do the refurbishment, but I think Stewart sent me a link to the video to do this, but I will only do this refurbishment if the keyboard needs it. I think a lot of times you can just take this apart, give it a good clean with a little isopropyl alcohol, and usually it actually fixes it. Not usually, but it often can fix the keyboard. I'm going to store this in here, and I will write SX-64 membrane on here. I do not want to accidentally recycle this. Let's peek inside these little green goodie bags. This one I can see is console 5, so these are obviously capacitors. There we go. We have the 110 volt SX-64 cap kit. That's a lot of caps there. And this one, the label popped off. This here is the JVC monitor SX-64. Wonder if there were different monitors. Again, a ton of capacitors. I don't normally do proactive recapping unless there's actually a fault with something. But of course, it's always worth inspecting, make sure there's no leakage, because if you have leaky caps, that does cause damage. And if I ever do see any caps that are leaking, or if I see caps that I know are the ones that are prone to leakage, like the ones on Amigas and Macs, the surface mount caps, those basically 100% of the time leak. There are also a few other caps, refills, I always change if I see them. And there are some certain Nippon Chemicon series of caps, generally from the 90s, that if I see those, I will also change those out because they always leak. As a side note, I've ordered from Console 5 before myself for cap kits. They do a really good job. I recommend them. If you don't want to order from DigiKey a whole bunch of caps, you just want the caps you need to do your cap kit, check these guys out. And I'm not being paid by them or anything like that. I just personally have bought from them, and Stewart did as well. So thank you very much, Stewart, for that. Okay, so let's see what these little 3D printed things are here. Oh, this looks like a miniature SX-64, it's super cute. Oh, wow. I wonder if the keyboard the keyboard comes off. So there's the little keyboard. There's the little computer. It's so well done. And there was a little sticker of the boot screen, which I think I'll need to get a little double-sided tape, which I have, and reattach that. But there it is. That's how it's supposed to look. Adorable. Absolutely adorable. Unfortunately, the tilt stand is not rubberized, so when I let go, it does just fall down. Oh, and the boot screen just fell out. I think with a little piece of rubber on this back edge and a little piece on the tilt stand would allow this to stay in the correct position. Oh, this looks like another one, and a really big one. I'm gonna need to ask Stewart if he actually printed these himself. I mean, this has labels, so it must not have been him, right? It must have been someone else doing the printing. But these are so adorable. This is just a large expanded version of the other one. Boot screen and everything. Super cute. And I think it's gonna have exactly the same problem. If I put this up with the stand, yeah, it just falls down. That's a dense print. I really gotta hand it to people who do 3D prints like this. Obviously this was printed in multiple parts. We have the gray sections here and here that were probably clipped on. The blue trim, these are probably printed separately and also attached here and here. And then of course this was attached separately. And the keyboard is also made up of white, gray, black, and gray with a sticker. So these are both fantastically cute. We got the full-size SX-64, the middle tier, and the tiny tier. And there we have it again, all three size tiers of the SX-64. Oh, I almost forgot, there's the VIC-20 here. This is the German VIC-20 with the weird power connector. VIC-20s are relatively reliable. They're very simple machines, and they seem to work pretty good, actually, just in the long term. If you saw my recent mail call video, though, the one with the 80 columns card and whatnot, I was having some issues with that VIC-20, where it just randomly doesn't start, and that'll be something I need to troubleshoot in the future. But let's see if this PAL VIC-20 works. I don't have a single PAL VIC-20. Not really sure if there's many differences between the PAL ones and the NTSC ones, other than speed, of course. Like the clock speed's a little bit different, stuff, whatnot. But I don't know if like a certain game will only work on the PAL ones and not the NTSC ones, that's not unusual on the 64. So I grabbed my NTSC board just for comparison. And there is what the power input jack looks like. It says 9 volt AC, but you can give it 12 volt DC. It actually works fine as well. Polarity is not important because it's rectified AC, so anyhow. But notice the way the connector looks. 2 pins, nothing is split in between them. And if we look at the one from Germany, similar, it says 9 volts AC, but it's different connector and it's got a barrier in between. I'm also noticing that the power switch here is stuck. I was just going to test this in the case, but I think I need to crack this open, take a look inside, and try to get that power switch freed up. Usually some Deoxit in there should do the trick. So I guess it does have some kind of cardboard, but it is the same exact revision as my NTSC board here. If you notice, the layout is identical, although has no can around the VIC chip. Yes, this uses the VIC, not the VIC-2 like the 64, it's just the VIC. My NTSC one here, see, it has a metal cage there. It used to have a cover, which I took off a long time ago. But this one, it's not even there at all. It's never been attached. And that's because in Germany, they didn't have the FCC back in 1981 or whatever this computer was made. So it doesn't have the same shielding thing going on that the US ones do. I am removing the motherboard because I'm taking out this cardboard RF shield. I don't like those at all. This machine's in pretty good shape. Even though it's just a little dirty. I don't see any evidence of rework on the back, so this thing is sporting all of its original components and chips. Well, I mean, the ones in the sockets could have been swapped out, who knows, but the ROM chips are all soldered on the motherboard, which is a little bit annoying. Even on my NTSC one here, they are in sockets, and that's more typical, so typical Commodore fashion, not everything is socketed. Taking a quick glance at the date codes, here is the 50th week of 1981. There are some 82 date codes on here. In fact, this one here is 23rd week of 82, although this could have been swapped because that is in a socket. 6th week of 82, 6th week of 82. This is the 1st week of 82. So I think this machine seems like it was probably made early in 82 and maybe later it went in for warranty repair and they swapped out the VIC chip. Maybe that failed, who knows. All right, so the power switch, actually, I freed it up by pushing on it hard, and it is working. I don't like how stiff it is. It feels very loose. Feels like it might be broken. I don't know. So I'm just gonna try to get some Deoxit into it here. Try to free it up a little bit. Well, as is normal with Deoxit, the switch now works pretty well. So hopefully that is not broken. Since the power connector is pretty dirty on the outside, I'm just gonna clip on right on the inside here. And I'm gonna set my bench power supply for 12 volts, about 1.7 amps, which is about what this thing needs. It has a linear 5-volt regulator underneath here, and that's why this thing consumes so much current. A ton of it is wasted in this large heatsink here. That's where most of that heat from the VIC-20 comes from, is this thing. So bench supply is on. And is the computer running? It's black screen. Let's just power cycle it here. So it's syncing up on the retro tank. Oh, hey, it worked. Now the picture's a little dim, but that is not unusual for VIC-20s. When you go to use them on a composite monitor and you don't use the RF modulator, you actually do need to fiddle with these controls a little bit, which I'll do right now. There's two pots here. The one on the left is the one that controls the peak-to-peak voltage, and it's just generally a bit too low out of the box. So crank that up a little bit. There we go. That looks a lot better. Let's power cycle this computer and just see if it starts reliably. Okay, it worked that time again too. Well, anyways, let's plug the keyboard in, see if that's working. All right, well, luckily these keyboards, this one does seem to be working actually. Easily serviceable though, easily washable. You take it apart, you can clean it out. Pretty much always get it working again. Now this one appears to be fully functional. Excellent. A PAL VIC-20. I absolutely love it. And we have this stuff that Stewart sent. There's a couple packages. There's this. This came inside the SX-64 box. So let's start with this. The SX-64 came from Final Form here in Portland. So it looks like a business card for Final Form and one of their stickers. And we have a cartridge, which I'm assuming is a C64 cartridge, Congo Bongo for the C64 home computer by Sega. It's good condition label otherwise, other than the sun fading. And then what is inside of this little package here? It looks like a couple floppy disks. So the original Commodore 1541 disc. We have Summer Games 2 for the 64. Killed Until Dead by Accolade for the 64 and the 128. Super Zaxxon, a disc version. I'm not sure I even knew that there was a disc version versus a cartridge version. And we have Test Drive. Let me break out the ZIF-64 for at least testing this cartridge. I won't test those discs now because nothing spectacular about disc-based games. It's easy to make new images or whatnot, plus discs go bad so frequently, they're more likely just gonna be bad. So let's stick Congo Bongo in. You know what's funny is the label, when you put it in a computer, it would go this way, and the Congo Bongo label's upside down. I don't know if that's the normal way it's done. And here we go. Let's see, is that gonna work? Oh, it's working. Congo Bongo, 1983. Nothing like a brown and green color scheme. Let's do joystick. I'll plug in my gamepad here. All right, I had this game on my Apple II. Gotta dodge the monkeys. Okay, so monkeys kill you, but I think I had to jump up there, get to that guy up there. All right, and I died because I didn't jump, whoops. Neat, so that cartridge is working. So let's see what else he sent here. Load 64. Oh, this looks very interesting. This little dude's supposed to help people back up and create tapes for Commodore devices, though it should work for any tape-based system you might have. It connects your PC through USB, creates an audio device, microphone and speaker, and then connects a Commodore tape drive to the other side. Then using a few free programs, you can create the tap files. Full instructions, and a copy is also loaded on the USB thumb drive, is located at that URL right there. So here's the data set that Stewart sent along. So this connector goes right in here like that. You plug this into your computer, that obviously powers up the tape drive. And when you hit play and on your Windows or Mac or whatever, you hit record, like on Audacity or whatever, you'll get a nice copy of the data. That is super cool. And one thing to know is that Commodore doesn't just send the analog sound from the tape down the connector. It actually sends a digital signal. Inside the data set, it converts the analog signal on the tape into a digital signal. And that's why loading tapes on the Commodore is actually quite reliable. Like, there's no volume control to fiddle with. You don't get tape error a lot of times. It's because that conversion process happens in here and it's all calibrated to work properly. And remember, there was a mail call a little while ago, which someone sent me this device, which plugs into the back of the computer, and you plug your phone or your computer into the headphone jack here, and you input the sound playback of those tap files, and you will load them on your 64. So it's essentially the reverse of this thing. So with these two things, it's perfect for archiving any old tapes you have. That is absolutely and extremely cool. I had no idea something like this existed. And then we have the next little package here, which I see says Commodore 64 Wi-Fi modem. Now I might actually have one of these already. I was sent in a Wi-Fi modem. Even though this looks different for all intents and purposes, I think it works exactly the same as the one I have. I don't know where it is right now, but I never actually got the other one working. But the way this works is you plug it in your user port, you run the terminal emulator software, and this is an ESP8266 Wi-Fi microcontroller. And this will have firmware loaded on here that acts as a modem. So you just like ATDT and you type in the IP address and it essentially telnets to the BBS you're trying to get to. And the computer thinks you're actually talking to a modem when in reality you're talking over telnet over the internet. Looks like this one has a couple toggle switches that my other one doesn't have. So this one here, you can power this little board from the Commodore or from the USB port. And this one looks like 9600 baud on or off. So yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I think the fastest speed you can do on the 64 is 9600 baud. This does not have a serial port in it, so it's kind of like bit banging serial over the user port, which is why you have a bit of a limitation on speed. Although 9600 baud is quite impressive. And the note Stewart wrote, the little doohickey is a modem emulator that allows you to connect a Commodore to your Wi-Fi, then to a web-based BBS. It was created by Commodore Kaz, apparently another native of New England. Instructions for setup are attached, and there's stuff on the USB drive. There's a video, and here are the setup instructions. And just like the other one I have, it's CCGMS 2017. That is the terminal emulator software that you use, and it totally works. These things work really well, and if anyone's watched my channel before, you may have seen that I actually have a Wi-Fi modem that I made a while back. So inside this box is a Node MCU. There's a USB jack there, so it's right here on the back, and it's the 8266. And then I have from that a little board that converts from the TTL serial into RS-232. So you can plug this into any computer, any standard computer, and this will work. Like you could just run this with a PC, Tandy, Commodore, whatever. Well, Commodore requires an adapter. So right here is something I made a long time ago. I don't think I ever really showed this off on the channel. So this is a 1200 baud modem that's for the Commodore, right? There's the user port connection, and originally on the backside here it had the phone cables that would plug in so you could dial your BBSs. Well, I gutted out a bunch of the circuitry in here, and I actually wired in one of those RS-232 to TTL adapters directly to the user port, because the Commodore, like I said, it's not RS-232, it's actually TTL. There's RS-323? Sorry if it's RS-323. No, it's 232, isn't it? I always mix those up. Anyhow, this little converter converts the standard serial port that's over this 5-volt TTL into the correct signaling, so I could use this to any other computer, I could use this to a modem, a real modem, or I can use it to my Wi-Fi modem. So for this, I just need a little 9-pin cable to connect these together, and actually that gets me on the internet as well. So this thing is all of this just combined into this one little thing, but I did this quite a long time ago, and it's pretty neat. I was pretty pleased with myself. In fact, you can just kind of see there, I cut away where the phone jacks were, and instead, you have a serial port. And with that, I'm going to end this video here. Now, of course, I have to say that I am completely, utterly blown away by what has been inside these boxes. All of this stuff, I had no idea what was coming. All I knew is I had received rather large packages that came from Stewart, but I guess I never expected to have things like an SX-64 sent in. That's just blows my mind. So Stewart, thank you so much for all of this incredible stuff, not to mention all the things you have sent in before. And of course, I have to mention all my other viewers who have sent in stuff to Mail Call as well. You are just so generous and amazing. And keep watching Wednesdays. There'll be more mail call videos, especially all the stuff that's under the Christmas tree, which I haven't opened yet, as I will be opening that up soon and making more videos. And as for the things here that have faults, I'll be working on this stuff in future videos, not to mention all those other Commodore 64s and the VIC-20 that I've gotten from other viewers. I think I'm overdue for some good Commodore repair videos, so keep your eyes peeled for those. So that's gonna be it. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, but if you didn't, you know what to do. Put your comments and your suggestions in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and the little bell icon for notifications. Have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, all those things. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.